So the next panel, we're going to talk about AI and its impact on the end user. Firstly, we're going to introduce a moderator for the session. Professor Jeffrey Sonnenfeld is currently the Senior Associate Dean of Leadership Studies and the Lester Crum Professor in Management Practice at the Yale School of Management, as well as the founder and president of the Chief Executive Leadership Institute, a nonprofit educational and research institute focused on CEO leadership and corporate governance. He previously served as a full-tenure professor at Emory's Goldwater Business School for a decade and professor at Harvard Business School for a decade. Professor Sonnenfeld's related research has been published in 100 scholarly articles, which appeared in the leading academic journals in management, such as Administrative Science Quarterly and the Academy of Management Journal. He has also authored 8 books, including The Hero's Farewell, an award-winning study of CEO succession, and another bestseller, Firing Back, a study on leadership resilience in the face of adversity. Professor Sonnenfeld's work is regularly cited by the general media in such outlets as Business Weeks, Forbes, the Wall Street Journal. He's also a staff contributor for CNBC and staff columnist for Fortune, Time, and many other similar major publications.
Sonnenfeld was recognized by Poets and Quants magazine as the 2022 Professor of the Year in recognition of his high-profile efforts to catalyze the historic exits from Russia of over 1,000 global businesses after the invasion of Ukraine, and was chosen for Worth magazine's Worthy 100 Leaders list, an annual global listing of the most influential leaders across society. Sonnenfeld has advised the White House, U.S. State Department, U.S. Treasury Department, and Council of Economic Advisors on Russian economic sanctions and business retreats, and has testified to the U.S. Congress. Business Week listed Sonnenfeld as one of the world's 10 most influential business school professors, and Directorship Magazine has listed him among the 100 most influential figures in corporate governance. Professor Sonnenfeld was appointed by Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont to serve as co-chair of Advance Connecticut, where he helps lead the state's economic development. And Sonnenfeld also serves on the board of directors of Connecticut Innovations, which is focused on building the innovation and business ecosystem within the state of Connecticut.
Also, we're very happy today to welcome our 3 exceptional panelists. Also, want to share that we're going to have first-hand information today, so this session is going to be off record. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. And I don't know that you do. In hearing that wonderful introduction, I felt a little nervous because Jack's in my class, so I grade him. So maybe he felt he had to do that. Joseph did this as a volunteer. What was unnerving to you was, are they going to read a 6th page of introduction? I think already by the 2nd, I'd lost a third of the room, and by the 3rd page of that introduction, I started to slightly dislike myself a fair bit. But you guys had committed it to memory, which is really horrifying. So please purge those precious neurons. You don't want to use it for this. So I'm really sorry, Stephen. We do have to edit back. I'm really sorry. We gave that to you, I guess. So I'm so sorry. But don't worry. You're going to have really interesting panelists. But I should mention, as I thank Jack and Joseph, that Drew, Rockavell, Nancy, Chloe, all these other great students involved in pulling this off. Congratulations, John Awada, who is an old friend of mine from many life stages ago. And John, I have to say that I'm so glad that Ravi Dar, my colleague, captured you to bring you in here to take us light years forward on so many fronts of technology and governance. And Rob Thomas, we couldn't really imagine much of a better opening than you gave us in laying out so much of the groundwork that is so critical before us. And what we find there is that as you made, I think, pretty clear, is we have issues of governance, we have issues of data, labor, experience, and all the rest, and a lot to work with there. with all this IBM expertise in the room, I should also then, in the interest of full disclosure, mention that I once had a broom closet around the corner from the chairman, Frank Carey, and we spent a day at that time as we were talking about bubble memories. This was a long time ago, and it was a day of hot debates on it. Then we went, in the middle of the day, went down to the cafeteria because IBM, as John and Rob would remind us, is so egalitarian. Everybody eats the same place and everything. And he turned to me and he said, "Hey, young fella, you see that discussion we've had today?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "What the hell is bubble memories? What are they?" So anyhow, he was making these huge investment decisions, not knowing, in fact, what it is we were wrestling with. It's great to hear that Rob is actually a master of the technology as well as its uses. If I could have my laptop for a second, you could put that up. Well, today's a special day. As my students know, happy March. March comes in like a lion and out like a lamb. Why would my students know? Is yesterday we were celebrating Leap Day, and that this is, of course, gave out little chocolate frogs for everybody, the Harry Potter frogs, to celebrate the Leap Day of it all. But this is this important landmark period that we have today. We don't have chocolate for everybody. We had good, delicious breakfast. Is what we have is a milestone in our calendar is a lot of news out there. A lot of news. If you could go back to the main slide, is if you wanted a bigger picture of the lion, is that we've got issues that are sometimes painful to wrestle with in the day's news as we woke up. We have the Supreme Court decision, of course, several of them that have some people anxious about where our democracy is going. We're 8 months away from election. We woke up today to more horrors from the Middle East on the news, and that here we are is 5 months after the horrors of the mass slaughter in Israel, and then the 1,200 people, and then the thousands of tens of thousands of people that we see have suffered consequently in Gaza. We have the third anniversary of they start the third year of the second anniversary of the Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as Joseph mentioned in that great introduction. It's tough stuff to hear. We're not going to be dealing with any of it. In fact, if I could have my slide right now, is my kids are too old for me to help manage their, if I have my laptop back for a second, so I don't have to worry about my kids watch. My dog, though, is addicted to television. And this is, with Benji, I had always put on Animal Planet until I learned that, in fact, that so much of it is distressing noise of animals crying in bad situations. So I'd been putting on CNN or MSNBC or other news shows. And it turns out, with the headlines we just heard there, that's too distressing. So even Benji can't listen. That's fine, thanks. So what do we turn to now? Is we turn to what's out in the headlines in your space. Is this more cheerful as we take a look at some of the speculative headlines that are out before us now? Is we had a conference here last year, and it was just as one of these milestones is, of course, it's 9 years since OpenAI was founded, but most of the world didn't know about it, and hardly anybody in the business community outside of your space knew about it. It was really broke forward into public consciousness around Thanksgiving of last year, which is hard to believe, but it's true. Even though many in this room knew what was going on, certainly, as we'll talk about, Elon Musk had some sense of what Sam Altman was doing. We'll talk about that, of course, too. At our CEO Summit, the first week of December, we wound up putting up speeches from CEOs that we recreated, stuff they'd never said, but sounds like they could have said, and using their voices. They were shocked, and it was a fun parlor trick in December of 2023. Who would have thought where it's taken off since? And the explosion has been pretty remarkable. So we wound up having I don't know if you'd put up that slide, if you put the laptop up, we just say this is what we pulled together. We could have the laptop back. We pulled together 100 CEOs to talk about what they were doing artificial intelligence. It was everybody from Satya Nadella to Bob Iger to quite an amazing cross section. We found it was a lot more positive, a lot more encouraging than we expected. In fact, we saw that there were various clusters of exactly who was doing what and how much it had grown and had changed, but it wasn't in fact going in a path that anybody predicted, and it wasn't going in a path to where some of the alarmists had suggested things were going, and it wasn't going in a path where, in fact, a lot of the financiers thought it was going. If I could have the laptop again, and our panel has some points of view on this. We asked the CEOs, will generative AI be more transformative than previous technological advancements? Only 45% said yes, it will be. 55% said no, it wouldn't, which was not consistent with, of course, a lot of the general media headlines. And then we said, total capital investing, and look how much this had grown in this period of time. We're going to put up 24 until we realized everybody's in it now, so it's hard to even classify what these are. That's fine. I'll go off the laptop again. Is that could we even figure out how we would classify it and who comes out which ways on it? So one thing that I'll pretty much close on is as we get into this discussion, if I get the laptop again, you can find that there are different, almost tribal parties. Some of them overlap, but if you have the polarities on an X and Y dimensions, as a lot of you think in terms of ordinate abscissa, is from caution to enthusiasm. We see in the general media and in public use, pragmatism to conceptual. Is that what's possible there and what's really useful? Is there's a group of alarmist activists. Many of them have science backgrounds and technological backgrounds that worry us daily about the misuse of the technology. There are commercial profiteers that are big enthusiasts as cheerleaders, but as we've seen in other technologies, just in the way John had asked the question to Rob, is a lot of times we've gotten ahead of what even the technology can do, but you have a lot of Klingons that wind up promoting businesses they don't quite understand. We have the global governistas that are trying to take a look at how we control what needs to be done, either on a nation-by-nation basis or international governance processes. And we have the true believers out there who think, gosh, we're just on the front edge of all the basic research here. We're getting ahead of ourselves. So who's in the middle? Those curious creatives. That's where we see most of the business community. I think we can send you, if you haven't seen it, some research on who's done what in terms of the business world and how they've operationalized it. But how these curious creatives work is where we see the CEOs. So as we get into it all, that's fine. Let me just remind you, you didn't want to see that, this was something which I thought that everybody would have known this situation, but John and certainly Rob know this. Could we have the video again?
I've wondered whether you might be having some second thoughts about the mission.
How do you mean?
Rumors about something being dug up on the moon. I never gave these stories much credence, but particularly in view of some of the other things that have happened, I find them difficult to put out of my mind.
Open the pod bay doors, please, Hal.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave.
Thinking about Hal.
This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
So that's sort of where we were. Where's John hiding, John Iwata? Or Rob? Or anybody in the room? Is an open question. What did HAL, what was that supposed to stand for? How? One letter off of IBM. So I just figured, since we're opening with the wisdom of IBM, we could see how people have been demonized and how it's applied. Well, we've got a group that's a lot more positive than a lot of the imagery that's been out there in some of the general media. Chris Duffey is a leading tech futurist. He is the head of Adobe's GenStudio. He looks at emerging solutions in that position. He's a leading tech futurist and expert in growth opportunities for brands and organizations in society through technology and creativity. Chris spearheads Adobe's strategic development for emerging solutions, including Adobe's strategic development partnerships for generative AI. He's an expert on cutting-edge technologies such as AI, generative AI, AR, metaverse, Web3, blockchain, and spatial computing. His sessions have been in all sorts of media, both in the technology and industry spaces, or even reaching into Access Hollywood, or Extra OK Magazine, Hello People, Daily Mail, Euro News. He has this great media reach, which, not to tell secrets, but actually he not only worked at WPP previously, but been about 8 years now at Adobe, so he's really well anchored in there. But that's the longest he's been anywhere, I think, in his whole life, because believe it or not, he's been in 35 different ad agencies before. You heard it here first, moving across the portfolio of different, and you looked at the trajectory of somebody moving the advertising space to see where they're going. Is that moving upwards? It's constantly a great path here. So thanks so much for joining us. He got actually stolen away at a conference like this, where he was presenting when he was at WPP, partnering with Apple on some fibromyalgia treatments that they were working on with new sensors and stuff, and Adobe said, we need that. So anyhow, who knows what can happen here today. So I hope you don't mind me revealing the... And Samuel Payne. Samuel is the head of creative and content user experience at Google. He leads the multidisciplinary creative content team for user experience, a product group at Google, responsible for vision, strategic planning, execution across a series of design programs. He's currently focused on how generative AI might improve the usual experience of Google Play, a product used by more than 3 billion people. Prior to Google Play, Sam helped shape the user experience for Google products on iOS and Android. He spent years leading a small, experienced team charged with prototyping new applications of emerging technologies like augmented reality, creative applications of machine learning, and conversational interfaces. So thank you so much for joining us, Sam. And Sam would have the, I think, seniority on the group in terms of your 9 years, I think, with Google. And Sabastian Niles. Sabastian is president and chief legal officer at Salesforce, where he leads and oversees the company's global government affairs, legal, corporate affairs organizations, the Office of Ethical and Humane Use. So just could be relevant to today's topics. He's a member of the executive leadership team, reporting to Salesforce CEO, chairman, and co-founder Mark Benioff, and is a strategic advisor to Salesforce and its board of directors. Sebastian happens to be very angry with me right now, just among we friends, because I made a mistake of congratulating Mark Benioff for letting him join us today. Apparently Mark didn't realize this is where Sabastian was, and he's been loading him up even as we're talking now, right? As he's sending you messages of things he needs you to be working on instead of this. So instead of being complimented for being here, Sebastian, instead of the kudos, he's in hot water. So it's entirely my fault. So I apologize, Sebastian. But if you're ever going to need a new position, just follow Chris. He knows how to find them really fast. But he's president, as president and CLO. Sabastian stewards Salesforce's role as a strategic advisor to stakeholders, helping customers, partners, policymakers, and industry leaders prioritize trust, impact, and responsibility in an AI world. He oversees Salesforce's commitments to responsible and ethical innovations in AI by developing and implementing policies that put trust at the center, collaborating with stakeholders to navigate emerging risks and regulations. Before coming to Salesforce, Sabastian was a partner at the great firm of Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz. That's all the good stuff. Sadly, he earned his law degree at the Harvard Law School, or he co-founded the Harvard Association of Law and Business, and in fact, it was at the evil Harvard Club in New York where we first met centuries ago, battling things out over activist investors and things. So with that distinguished panel, I'd wonder, as we get started, I know, Chris, this is really unfair to do, but you were suspected I would do something like this to you. As we were talking in the back of the room, we heard the great opening discussion and what Rob Thomas had to say, and there's some ways where you guys take a different approach. And I was wondering if you can perhaps, even though you develop strategic partnerships, and I'd love you to talk about those partnerships, is at the same time, you wouldn't say that you're taking Rob's suggestion of opening up this architecture to the whole world. Can you explain how Adobe handles it?
Yeah, great question. Great to be here. Had a dinner last night with a number of the students, and I was really encouraged, heartened to hear this great balance between business opportunity but also societal opportunity. And I think that's probably a key theme that we're going to be talking about today in terms of the best application of artificial intelligence. And for the most part, when we talk about AI today, we're essentially talking about Gen AI. So with Gen AI, to make it really actionable, you have to have vast amounts of data, billions, if not trillions of pieces of data to train it on your specific use case. At Adobe, we've been hard at work over the last 12 to 14 months on our new generative AI tool called Firefly. And so we train that off of Adobe stock, comprised of about 350 million pieces of assets. We also created this creator economy where we monetize the contributors, and they also have the opportunity to opt in or opt out. Thirdly, we created an industry-wide consortium comprised of roughly 3,000 companies across software, hardware, and media channels. And that adds a layer of greater transparency for the output of those generations. You can think of it almost as a nutritional label, invisible on everything that gets outputted. And within that nutrition label, we call it content credentials. You can see how it was trained, how it was augmented, how it was distributed, and we're getting very close to the ability to track the performance of that. With that said, to your question, we prefer not to outsource our data. We prefer not to have others train off of our data because we feel we want to own the responsibility. We want to ensure, prevent biases, unintended use cases of that. Additionally, to supplement that, we do offer the ability to custom train. So we can now set up an instance where a customer will do a custom training model within their own sandbox. Additionally, we offer the capabilities to leverage APIs to then scale those generations. So long story short, we prefer to keep that data in-house. We fully recognize the importance of transparency, and that's where we feel the content authenticity initiative, that those content credentials, offers insight into how it was trained, but we prefer not to have others train off of our training models.
You know, we take a look at, I don't know, in a different industry, perhaps in aerospace, Boeing with 900 subcontractors, and you see the quality problems there that result. We can see how, in fact, you would rather, if you're going to be accountable and responsible, as Adobe, I think, has been, you want to have full oversight and control over it. And but just between us, and I really, of course, trust. Look at you would trust these people. Who would you not partner with?
Interesting. You know, I think AI is bringing up, and I was excited about this panel because in many ways we talk about how AI is compressing the gap between disciplines within enterprises. My background being a creative and a designer, now the creative community is working closer with the data, the strategist, and the distribution. But equally, it's also compressing the gap between companies. So I was excited about this discussion because it's actually brought Adobe closer to Google, Adobe closer to Salesforce. And the reality is the tech stack needed to really activate the full vision of generative AI is so complex that it's a multi-layer tech stack across multiple companies. Directly, I think the question still becomes, are we aligned ethically in terms of how the content is being trained and the distribution alignment around that as well.
Well, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for opening things up for us, Chris. And Sam, I don't know if there's anything that Chris just said that you would disagree with, but it's anything you would say, it would be hard for any of us to to question if you have working on a product that has 3 billion users. I think you must know how to do something a little bit better than many of us do. So congratulations on that. How you make something like that and the user experience even better would be fascinating. But are you doing anything on the front of partnerships? Because you too are not, we wouldn't say yours is an open architecture as well, as much as our opening discussions was questioning it.
Yeah, I mean, I think to answer your question directly, I probably wouldn't partner with Yale School of Management on any generative AI work.
But the law school's fine.
Maybe the law school. Maybe the law school.
You know something? Not only are these people trustworthy here at the school, they're all technologically proficient. I'm the only one that hits the buttons where we start to see smoke billowing out of the podium. That's not supposed to happen, but everybody else here is really good.
Well, okay, maybe I can be convinced. I think, for me anyway, I come at it from a designer's perspective, and I suppose I think about the reason to have transparency and openness, right, and the kind of trust that we want to build with users. And Google has a long history of being open in the way that it develops software and platforms. I mean, Android is probably the best example of that, where it's almost completely open. But I think there's a conceptual misalignment sometimes around what the technology is, because it isn't a calculator. It isn't something that has a determinative result, right? It's non-determinative. It's essentially, the origins of the programming are, if you have a bag of balls that are yellow and red and you pull a ball out, the system will try and guess what color it is, right? That's essentially what it's trying to do. But at a more advanced level, you can say it was the best of times, and it will say it was the worst of times, and it suddenly feels really magical and amazing. But it isn't a person, and it doesn't have an entity, and the way that we regulate the openness and transparency around that, we shouldn't lift it from the transparency that we want from a closed system that we can understand how it works. We should try and create a new type of thinking around this, like a new framework for something that behaves in this way. It's a tool that guesses, essentially, and I don't think we've ever had a tool that guesses before that we've used so extensively, right?
Well, so you draw your boundaries, it sounds like, in a very similar way to Adobe. But I also think that you have a live case study for us this week, which I meant to ask you in the green room if it's okay if we bring up, but I
think it's fine.
And that is Google parent company values plummet, losing $70 billion after Gemini AI scandal. Google AI faced backlash after refusing to produce images of white people. And the stock fell, I think, about 4.5% initially on that news. Stuff happens, as we know, and I don't know that you guys feel there are any villains there at all, or maybe even any errors directly. But your response to it, I think, is not necessarily yours personally, but the enterprise-wide, and Sundar Pichai in particular, perhaps a little bit different than maybe Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or some others would have responded. Can you talk about that? Because I think in terms of responsible uses of AI, is as we're on a frontier, we don't always get it right. And how do you face stepping into a pothole? How do you correct it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it isn't the first pothole we've stepped into, and it won't be the last, right? I personally feel that the way the company handled it was very good, because there is only so much testing and red teaming and refinement you can do within the organization, and we do a lot, and we try very hard to make the technology as user-friendly, as helpful, as responsible as we want it to be, but we need to see how people use it, and everybody wants to use it and use it for different things, and until we share the technology with people and find the ways that they're using it and then adapt the technology, it's very hard for us to anticipate all of the possible outcomes. But I think more broadly, there's just a significant amount of scrutiny over all companies that have these tools and models in the market now, because I think everybody recognizes that the stakes are so high. I mean, the transformation is going to be significant. We heard from from Rob earlier on, and I completely agree. And we'll just have to, we'll all have to pick our game up, I suppose, is the general sense of it. And we keep having those conversations internally. Well,
yeah, and I think that was right. Rather than to deny it and to somehow sandbag media or to attack the legitimacy of critics. Even the great Intel did this originally. They came out with a chip that three of you in the room are old enough with me to remember, the Pentium chip. If you read Andy Grove, the very charismatic, wonderful co-founder of Intel, if you read his book, Only the Paranoid Survive, every chapter sounds like my opening introduction here. It was I. Except the chapter on the Pentium chip. That was the we chapter because they blew it. But initially they were denying it because some very sophisticated user found out that there was a problem in the coding and there's some zeros off which matter, and it was devastating. But they were attacking the critics, and it was unlike Andy Grove. And but the way you guys responded, I think, was remarkable. What was said internally? Was there any kind of messaging internally as this happened?
I mean, the internal messaging was that what happened is unacceptable and we don't want it to happen again. We're going to work really hard to make sure it doesn't happen again. And I think internally everybody understands that the significant shift, and I think this is a problem that's unique to Google, is taking teams who were working on research exercises and moving them into a product space. Because as you alluded to in the introduction, the size of our products is so substantial, the operational implications for then running those products are significant. And this is part of that process, is moving from a closed experimental space to something that's more open and transparent and people are using. And everybody has said to each other, we need to be better, we need to be more responsible, we need to work harder at this, and we will. And I think that's the general vibe.
So lest anybody in the room think, well, this is sort of unfair to do to Sam. He seems like such a nice guy. Ask him to speak for the total enterprise and ask him to channel the voice of the CEO. But in fact, he not only did that really well, but this is particularly relevant to Sam because it's where this happens is not in the corner offices and CEO suites, but in fact, in your exact career background, it's really, as you remember, as I ran through perhaps too quickly for everybody, is that Sam's background was he spent years leading small experimental teams charged with prototyping new applications of these emerging technologies like augmented reality and creative applications of machine learning and conversational interfaces, and that there's only so much that you can anticipate though when you're doing the prototyping, right? I don't know how do you ask the. I mean, there was, just not to be too downbeat here, but one of my colleagues here, a guy named Paul Bracken, led a brainstorming session atop the World Tower, the World Trade Towers, 3 months before they were bombed. And it was in the Mirrors of the World, right at the top with leaders of Wall Street. I happened to be there, saw this happen. He did a great job of the discussion. They were anticipating what would happen with the next time there was a terrorist attack. Nobody in the room anticipated, though, that could be a kamikaze-style attack on the very building that everybody was in, and many of those people, of course, that were in that event never made it out now. So, how do you anticipate what we haven't experienced before?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's difficult about anticipating what we haven't experienced is that it is, to some extent, necessary to define what is now possible with the technology. So to give you a concrete example, the teams you were referring to, a couple of years back, we worked on voice recognition and natural language processing. And we used that to great effect in a sort of experience that we built with Disney, where the Google Assistant would listen to a parent who's reading a story to a child. So you'd say, the princess got on a horse and rode into a dark and scary wood. And the assistant would hear that and add sound effects to that story. So it would start going, ooh, or like there'd be the noise of trees rustling or whatever. Now, the way that we built that is that we understood how the technology works and the constraints of it, and we thought, this would be a cool, creative thing to do with this technology. I think what's fundamentally different about generative work is it opens up the space into places that we haven't really thought of. So one of my favorite examples that just got funded on Kickstarter, there is one winging its way to me as soon as it's built, is a clock that tells you the time in rhyming couplets. So every minute, a unique rhyming couplet will be created to tell you the time. So it's, I don't know, steam rising from your coffee cup. It's 9:40. But that doesn't rhyme. It's terrible. But that's why the machines will take over. But there is a lovely there's a beauty to it, I suppose, that is impossible to deliver with humans, right? We couldn't write that many hundreds of thousands of couplets for time. But I also don't think we could really anticipate that this technology could be used in that way. So I think there's a certain amount of open experimentation that has to happen before we can go, oh, okay, we could use it in this way and it would work in that fashion. So putting things out there, and I think to the point about openness, to bring it back to the question, it's important we all have this shared understanding and responsibility of how this evolves. And I think that's happening.
I'm glad you explained that, the stages that we have to go through, because if I went through on some of those opening comments I had on headlines that are out there, and I went through too quickly headlines in your space in the worlds of technology, we talked about Google in particular. We talked about what maybe perhaps, Sebastian, in just a few minutes you'll help us with, and untangling what's going on in the legal side of the battle with AI, with Sam Altman rather, and Elon Musk in the AI space. But we also could mention that since the start of the year, I guess, to my frustrations, I'm an Apple stockholder, even with the Vision Pro out there and all the excitement about it, Apple's stock is down, I think, around 6% or so. People saying they're taking too long to bring something out, whatever it is. And not that you're here to represent Apple, but if they really are working on something, you're living proof that it takes a while to be careful before you go public with what. So the schedule on these things is...
Right, and particularly I think this is where previous decisions have implications, right? I think Apple's commitment to privacy, I use Apple products and love Apple products, but that commitment to privacy comes with technical implications in terms of on-device processing and various other things. And that has then implications for future technologies, and as they're introduced, there are decisions that you have to sort of pay for previously, and I think all big companies are wrestling with that, right?
Well, I came in closer to you, not to indicate in any way I wanted to cut you off while we were talking. I was just coming in closer for the kill, just to see what in the world Sabastian has been writing. He's the only one of the three panelists that has notes in front of them, and I saw he's crossed things out and he's completely written it, given what the other two panelists have said. So, given...
Always a student.
But Sebastian knows me well enough that I can't be foiled by that. So we have to twist things up and surprise Sebastian yet still. Even though, Sebastian, we'd love to hear your responses, but there are some distinctive things about Salesforce that make today incredibly momentous. Really today, but you could say last night, Salesforce launched its new Einstein GPT Co-Pilot program, which helps companies use AI for more efficient decisions based on customer data. It is the world's first generative AI platform for companies. It's 20% of the Fortune 500 have already signed up for it, and day one, 25% signed up. Salesforce is fundamentally a different model of AI than many of its competitors. Some would argue that it's more honest and trustworthy business model than a lot. But don't take it from me. The person who's still sending messages, even as we're sitting here, as I just saw from Mark Benioff. Oh, you have it up? How did you know? I went, thank you. Just need some sound.
Said Data Cloud. It's amazing what is going on with
on
our incredible new product line. We're seeing the fastest growth of any new product that Salesforce has ever had, ever, with our Data Cloud. Well, I mean, I don't think either you or I could have ever imagined what has happened with Salesforce. I mean, we just finished up a year at almost $35 billion in revenue, and now we see us moving forward as the third largest software company in the world, delivering tremendous amounts of customer success. And Jim, it's really about, exactly like you said, customers, giving them what they need right now, and that is the ability to manage this huge amounts of data that they need to deliver high-quality artificial intelligence.
So tell me about how your Copilot is different, say, from another Copilot that I use pretty much every day.
Well, there's a big difference, Jim, because our Copilot uses our customers' data to make decisions. That's incredibly important. As you know, Salesforce is built on a rich fabric of data and metadata. And that data and metadata that serves so many of our customers, whether it's Amazon or whether it's IHG or even OpenTable or even, you know, an amazing company like Schneider Electric, all of these companies, their data and metadata is a woven fabric throughout their whole company that really illuminates their customer relationships. Our Copilot is deeply integrated into that data. You know, we already have tremendous user interfaces at Salesforce. You know that, Jim, our Sales Cloud, our Service Cloud, our Marketing Cloud. even Tableau, even Slack. These are amazing ways to talk to that data. But we have the ability then to go inside the data with the artificial intelligence and then provide unique insights because that data is living with us every single day. And that means that we're going to give those customers an incredible experience. In fact, I was just using OpenTable. I mean, you and I have made restaurant reservations before we've even shown up at a couple of the same restaurants. And when we get there, you know, it's always a great experience, but sometimes getting there, it's a little bit difficult because you're trying to work with that system. Does it really know me? Is it really able to understand what I'm trying to accomplish? With our Copilot, we're really seeing a level of artificial intelligence that's so usable, so easy to understand that our customers are having these amazing breakthroughs in their ability to run their business in an incredible new way.
How did he do there? Did Mark do a decent job, Sebastian?
He said it all much better than I would.
So is it really that different than everybody else's approach to generative AI?
From the feedback we're receiving, yes. It is beta. You know, we're launching it, right, sort of in beta. This particular Copilot and related items. There's different ways in which we've sort of taken AI sets of technology. We've had certainly like IBM, we've had an AI research arm for a very long time. We also have had, this is where Jeff will cut me off, a Salesforce futures arm for a very, very long time. One of the key folks in our Salesforce futures group is a good friend of mine, Peter Schwartz, who was a consultant and didn't write the whole thing, but was definitely a script consultant on Minority Report. And a number of other, right, sort of type of very kind of imagination capturing or perhaps unsettling, right, items. So the reason I flag this issue is about how do you meld, hopefully, first-class views of the future or alternative future scenarios, right, with the very practical lens that at Salesforce, we try to bring around these issues, which is, what do? Look, we build business applications that are focused on enabling our customers to confidently harness their data in a AI plus data plus trust plus CRM way to connect with their own customers in deeper ways. So the reason I just phrase it that way is kind of stepping back around how to think about these technologies. And you made a really powerful point around prior decisions have implications. So business model choices have implications. Values have implications. We have sought to build into our product design process, deployment, customer feedback, working with all sorts of our customers, which includes a lot of nonprofits, impact, government and private sector folks too, but our values. And our number one value is trust. It's trust, customer success, innovation, equality, sustainability. And I mention that because we try to think about how do you take these values and these concepts of purpose and infuse them into, right, sort of everything that we do. The title of this panel, right, sort of AI and the end user. Let me also just take a moment and share with you how we think about this end user concept, which may be in conflict with, I guess, the definitional concept of end user, or what Jeff and my colleagues here want to talk about. So when we think of the user, because we try to put the user first from a customer success angle, it's in two buckets. One bucket is we try to be a fan of Salesforce on Salesforce. We are customer zero. So I have for kind of all my teams and sort of everyone, we've created our own internal, right, Einstein playground. We created Slack AI, right? We created all these items, which is, well, let's use it and give ourselves some feedback. And sometimes what you find with some of these models, right, we're like, well, that didn't work, or that caused a problem, or I wouldn't want my customer, right, to be able to use these items. So we have kind of our internal items. But then with respect to our customers as end users, we think of our customers. We think of our customers' customers, because that's the lens that we're coming at it for how we are building these different business applications. But we're also really thinking about, for so much of what we do, our customers' internal customers, which is our customers' employees. They are the end users for what we're doing, because we're not really kind of taking the approach of, right, letting these very powerful items out more broadly into the world for just for the general consumer use. It's more through our customers and our customers' customers. And so And you kind of take that to a different level. When it's our, kind of Einstein copilots. Next week, we're going to be launching, we have our prompt builders, we have a Trailblazer DX developer conference, and different ways we use our approach on learning of Trailhead to really help upskill and reskill and really embrace the talent expansion potential for whether it's students, whether it's, workers who are later on in their career, whether it's sort of folks overseas, right? How can they really be more empowered around these sort of sets of issues? But what I would sort of leave you with is what I think of as the three AIs for business. Okay, and the three AIs for business, and when we try to look at it very pragmatically, it's amplified imagination. How do you really kind of just think fresh, bring a beginner's mind, right? Take a new approach, whether it's to reimagine customer relationships, how you do your work, just really kind of, right, so that kind of amplified, sort of imagination, element. Two, it's an element about impact, augmented impact, right? Which is, how do you use, we look at how to use AI to augment the humans, the people, right? To do better, to maybe, raise the floor on their own productivity, or impact, raise sort of these different sort of, items, right? So we've got the imagination, piece, right, of amplified imagination. You've got the impact piece, augmented impact. But the other one, which we feel is just really important, is the AI of accelerated intelligence, right? Which is, how do you push and accelerate the velocity of wise decision-making? Our Einstein Copilot helps with that for our customers, prompt builder, a whole sets of items. And so, when you think of that element, there of that, intelligence and the impact and that imagination, bring it all together wherever you sit, right? Are you in sales? Are you in law? Are you in marketing? Are you in HR? Right? Are you itself a data scientist, right, at sort of these set of companies? You're responsible for privacy. And on point of business models having implications, decisions having implications, technical architecture decisions having implications. At Salesforce, we also have chosen, it's a belief, but it's a choice, right, that our customers' data is something we also have to try to work with them to safeguard. Our customers' data is not our fundamental product. Right? That belongs, it's sort of sacred in a kind of meaningful, right, sort of type of sense. And that's what, when you think of the opportunity for trusted AI for business and how it can accelerate us, how it can amplify us, how it can help us raise the ceiling, right, sort of for our goals, we have to do all this in, I think, a trust-first way and hopefully model it for the private sector and then for private sector to work with governments and civil society so that we are able to achieve the benefits here in a way that work for all, in ways that benefit really kind of all of humanity and all of the sectors and all of the goals that we're trying to achieve. If it is for business, people want productivity, people want more margin, they want better performance, right? They want better outcomes. And I just think, all of this, it can't be, even though, we're all technologists, get excited about it, it shouldn't be AI for AI's sake. It should be for these more tangible, meaningful outcomes, right? I have 3 daughters, and we're sort of working through how do we think about these items. I want AI to be something that helps them have better futures, right? The communities, in which I operate. That's what everything what sort of Salesforce does. And so that fundamentally, and this is where let's bring corporate purpose and stakeholder capitalism into this. The purpose of business ought to be to solve the problems of people and planet profitably, but hopefully in a way where we're learning, we're listening, yes, we're leading, but we're not always, as business, doing things in ways that exploit problems or exacerbate problems. And maybe it requires a shared understanding of what the problems are, but this is the hard, really work. It's the hard work. So forgive me.
Forgive you? No, we thank you rather than forgive you. And if anything, we're thrilled that you chose to speak not as an attorney, as a matter of fact, but as a president of a great technology company, 3rd largest software company. That's fantastic. But your language was a little bit more cautious than your colleagues. Could you put up the screen, please, again from my laptop? As Mark Benioff said, and Fortune said, Mark Benioff unleashed a 30-minute tirade about AI's problems with stolen data. He's referring to some of these competitors, in particular ChatGPT. most AI models are very confident liars, producing misinformation, hallucinations, using stolen data. Einstein AI Copilot is fundamentally different type of AI. Putting on your general counsel hat, is there anything there that makes you nervous about the language, or is that's true? That's accurate.
I mean, as I said, Mark said it better than me. Look, what I would sort of offer up here is just, again, AI for business, enterprise AI, impact AI. The stakes are very high, right? These can't be kind of parlor tricks. These can't be items. And one item that you and Mark have discussed on the earnings call after speaking with me at length, around it is there was a situation, and certainly people can have the line, but for the grace of God, there go we. A company was using, not one of our products, but using a chat bot, right, in a very sort of difficult situation. A family was in a bereavement situation, right, sort of lost a family member, and the company had rolled out this chat bot, and the person was really thoughtfully trying to engage and understand sort of what are the policies, right, because finances sort of matter. And the chat bot said, well, there's a X day, right, sort of bereavement refund policy. Chatbot was very clear, very confident, right? Company says, no, that's not our policy. There's a lawsuit. The company also then, let's put sort of the legal hat on, right? Not speaking on behalf of Salesforce, wasn't our stuff, but still. What's the argument? This is why I think as students, right? But again, you're sort of going to be business leaders, right? But you're going to be, you're people, right? So these things matter. You know what the interesting argument was that the company made? Oh, we're not responsible for that chatbot or what it told the customer. That's a separate entity. It's a separate legal entity. It's over there, right? This court, anyway, said, I don't really know what you're saying, right? Award basically said, no, you are, right? And there's legal doctrines, authority, apparent authority, so on and so forth. But said, wait, you're the one who's putting this out, right, sort of to the customers on this thing you built. And that is actually an interesting example, right? Because maybe they also say it's challenging, it's sort of this or that. And it's also maybe why, what is happening with this technology? It's guessing, it's predicting. It's not grounded. And so that's one of the things that, sort of we've been building is something called the Einstein trust layer, which is we realized, serious business can't actually, they're trying to deliver on their own commitments, engage or use directly these models. And so you have to build, we had for Salesforce sort of this Einstein trust layer, which is going to help on the issues of toxicity, of hallucination, of let's strip out the most sensitive customer data so it stays within the customer before it goes out into the wild of all the different sort of models and whatnot. And then when it comes back in, the trust layer works to build back in the relevant customer information, be very grounded, and have all the stuff just work better. One of the sort of other co-pilots or pilots of products that are out there, there's elements, issues that have come up also where like people make a request and the thing just spins, right? By the way, I think there's a really interesting user design element if we're going to sort of talk technology, the psychology of it, like latency. I was meeting with some of the different model providers and going deep in the tech of, how do you reduce actual latency? But there's also, some of you may be in UX, or how do you reduce the human frustration of latency? So make it more interesting while you wait, right? And I think, I love, by the way, your point of the, bringing together, everything's collapsing, right? Of different functions, different groups to kind of all really come together and hopefully be unified, though, by values, by purpose, and really be serious about the technology and how it may be used or misused.
And that's what facilitates the seismic shift that you like to talk about, Chris. But Chris and Sam, I was just wondering, would you buy this characterization that the ChatGPT are very confident liars producing misinformation, hallucinations, and that companies cannot trust ChatGPT when it pulls unverified misinformation from the internet without trust filters, and ChatGPT and other AI competitors are using stolen data to feed its algorithms? Is that, and that's where the New York Times lawsuit is consistent with that. Would you guys agree with that characterization that Mark Benioff and the New York Times seem to share?
Do you want to take that first? Or?
And by the way, you don't have to answer questions just because I ask them.
I've got a point of view on it, but I mean, Chris, do you want to?
I will, and I love to. I think it's an important question. I just want to extend your point. Similar to Salesforce, Adobe is customer zero. So we're one of the few companies that use our tools to make our tools, to market our tools, and it has had a profound effect on our operating model as well. And so you sparked the thought that we came to a very quick realization that for years, and I'm sure you adhere to this principle as well. For years, we'd always focus on, have we taken out enough friction learning points for the user? And we've now completely inversed that to say, have we infused enough intelligence into the product to learn the user? And I think that's a really fundamental example of how profound these changes are. In terms of, obviously I'm an outsider, I don't have firsthand information. I can say we do have a deep partnership with Microsoft. We're aligned in terms of responsibility, go to market. So we've got deep
I don't expect you to try. I mean, they tried to buy ChatGPT. I mean, here they're trying.
No, well, I just add to that. I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's so strange to be adding friction to experiences, but I think that's absolutely what we are trying to do in interesting ways. And I love the amplified imagination thing. That is like the phrase that I've been looking for to try and anchor everything.
Trademarked.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I might just
because IP really matters.
Right. But adding these layers on top of the machinery is interesting. I think a lot of people have commented on generative AI being a similar transformational technology to something like electricity, and I think this language is interesting because I'm not sure we'd ever call electricity a liar in the sense that electricity can't really have the characteristics to lie, right? I think that what's interesting about the user experience dimension is that we kind of create these conjuring boxes of open-ended prompts, and we say, ask it whatever you want it to ask it and see what it can do, and then it gives you things back, and you start to feel more like it's a thing, like it's got a sentient kind of presence. And that is an error, I think, on our side from design.
Yeah, very well said. Anybody have a comment, a question, a complaint, anything? Yes.
Hi.
That was not a setup. Thank you.
I have an interesting background in business policy and speech language pathology. So I'm very interested in what Samuel mentioned about voice and Disney in that experiment, and also what Sabastian mentioned about people, planet, and profitability coming together. Can you tell us and drill down a little bit more on voice? You talked about data and how it comes into play. I'm interested in some of the technical IPA, voice markers that are used for AI.
Sure. Do you want to go first?
So we think of generative AI outputs in 4 or 5 horizons. The first one obviously being generative images. That's pretty well established, pretty mature. Next, as we've seen in the headlines, generative video, where we've got the capabilities there. There's a volumetric issue in terms of how do you store all of that assets and the compute power needed for that. The third one would be generative 3D. And then the fourth one is generative voice. And I think what you're alluding to, the human language is infinitely complex in terms of the semantic understanding, the nuances, accents, and so on. And so I think we're going to learn from each of those previous generative horizons to be able to better inform the generative voice. One additional point, if you look at the broader voice ecosystem, it's dramatically expanding. And I think that people are getting captivated with the device. Maybe it's an earplug or an ear pod, but it's actually going to be the output that's more informative. So what is that broader ecosystem that you're using the translation capabilities for? So that's our current perspective. We're currently pretty early on in terms of voice. We did launch music, which is has a close relationship to voice earlier this week. And so now you can text to a music output, which is quite exciting. Obviously, there's some IP considerations that we've taken into a lot of thought and effort.
Great question and fantastic response. And that's yes, right here.
So my question is, Mark Benioff made a very direct, strong analogy at Davos this year. I don't know if you know what I'm referring to, but he was concerned about the AI Hiroshima. He had made that statement at the end of January. Yeah. So the question is, what do all three of you think about that analogy and the risks or the upside of potentially removing a human factor from data-driven decision-making and everything about that?
Yeah. I'll go first. Look, I was involved, and a number of folks were involved, of course, on my team and others. With first you had the U.S., right? The White House, right? So our executive order, different items happening kind of across the administrations. Then I was working with the G7, who also said we need, our, Hiroshima principles, a code of conducts around these issues. Look, I think it's an area where the opportunities and possibilities of this version of the technology are tremendous. But just as it can accelerate and amplify and augment, right, the do-gooders or the well-being folks or the capitalists or the like, don't kid ourselves. It also, of course, right, can be used, deployed, amplified for ends that are not viewed as in the best interests of right society, right. And we're going to have all these very powerful, interesting sort of debates, to come. I think that's where we have to figure out how do you take a both-and approach, right? It's responsible innovation, right? It's charging forward, but again, hopefully not AI for AI's sake, right? But pushing the frontier of that wise adoption. And also, look, this is where I think maybe we may also have a slightly different view than some other folks. The private sector generally is viewed as saying no to regulation, no to government involvement, no to guardrails, to governance, to guidance. It's not our view. I mean, we've thought for a long time, you have to think about technology of how do you build trust in it? There's a very critical role. We need guardrails, we need governance, we need guidance, we need the right kind of regulation. Look, candidly, if we have to use this lens, U.S. leadership and innovation has been stifled by not having a proper, comprehensive, thoughtful privacy approach. There's reasons, some businesses don't want that. Other business models, sort of do it. It's just, you have to have the right kind of regulation approaches to it. Now, there's many different forms it can take, right? But, there's certainly, and so that's what Mark, had in mind there. And just real quick, I just want to comment, the point on, sort of raising, before, is an example where I think we need to have just much more inclusive approaches on technology, on who's involved with making the technology, collapsing the disciplines, right? Speech pathology, right? So how do we get all these insights, into there? And, you talk about, women on boards, the corporate governance and board of director implications around these issues, on enterprise risk, on corporate strategy, on oversight, on composition, all these. I mean, it's just, we can unpack all of these, items. But look, there's reasons to be worried. And actually, this may relate also to this lawsuit coming up. But these issues you also have to keep moving forward. I was with some folks the other day kind of going through all the UN SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, some of you may know, right, have dug into it. These SDGs are all examples of things that as a society, as a planet, as a private sector, everyone, we haven't gotten right. And if you go read them sometime, and forget, if you don't like the UN, it doesn't matter, just read the words and what they talk about, right? The oceans, education, clean water, right? We need to apply AI at scale to deal with the reasons why we haven't been able to make the progress we need on these things that should be like fundamental values and approaches, right? That we just want as humans. And lastly, we need to have humans at the helm around these sort of different sets of technologies, as we drive forward.
It does sound like he's agreeing with the use of the horrific analogy. However, he's also giving the rest of the equation about what nuclear energy can do for us. He's trying to balance it, and so and I'm getting all the warnings that we're actually not approaching the end. We've passed the end of the period. So, but can I have the slide very quickly right now off of my laptop? Is where the panelists huddled in the green room were frightened and thought that I'd make them open with this breaking news. I would be particularly negligent as a moderator if we didn't at least throw this breaking news up there, especially with an attorney that's great expert on the field. But before we get to you, Sebastian, I just want to find out if either of you want to comment, because Sebastian could give us really a semester's worth of insight on this one as the real expert on this topic. But you don't have to weigh in on it. Any thought on this?
I would just offer, I think, this is an example of the need for business realignment around incentives. Essentially, are we aiming for the right target from a business?
He's arguing it's a violation. I think Sebastian will unravel this with contract, and he put $44 million, and he told us 8 months ago that he put in $1 billion. It turns out he didn't. And then when the press called him on it, he said, well, it was in the tens of millions, in the 50 vicinity. So that's 44. He rounds up, I guess, differently than some of us do. But I don't know, anything you want to add?
The only thing I'd add is I think it's similar to the conversation earlier on where we were saying the shift from research into productized revenue-driving implementation of this technology is obviously a very intense transition, and I think this is indicative of that intensity.
And it's the commercialization,
exactly.
And again, to the theme of this whole conference, not to mention this panel on social impact.
Right.
Sebastian, take us home.
Look, all I was sort of going to offer on this thing, which everyone should read, of course, because you don't have other things to do, but maybe he will make it your homework assignment. 3 kind of buckets. Sort of one, this example is why, at Salesforce, when we're building products, we're very thinking of like an open ecosystem, where our customers, they will get to choose. Right? We sort of have a BYO, bring your own model. You can use, a model of your choice. Maybe you use ChatGPT. Maybe you use the Google models. Maybe Adobe one day will have a model. So different people have, different models. You can use one of the Salesforce proprietary models in our ecosystem. You can use the customer's own model, but we need open ecosystems, right? Rather than sort of super dependence, or, only on one. I think too, and the notion of, can quotes come back to bite people, right? You've heard some exciting quotes, sort of here. So I say this sort of serious jest. One of the powerful quotes that's in sort of the lawsuit, is from our firm Microsoft at Satya, where the quote is, "We have everything. We have OpenAI's data. We have the models. We have everything. We can just sort of move everything forward." So that's why there's all this regulatory inquiry worldwide. What's really happening, right? Sort of in that relationship, where is it going to go? And, we all work with Microsoft as everyone works together, right? Sort of business, but it's an example. But the third point is on these points of the great battles, right? Profits and purpose and humanity, the like. And if any of you are lawyers, but also you're business people, there's a thing in the back of the lawsuit. People read the facts and be interested. It's like salacious. It's interesting. But there's always a thing in the law around, it's not just liability and what's the predicate, but what are the remedies being sought? If you find as a court of equity, court of law, I don't want to bore you. But I just want to read 2 items about what Elon's asking for, because it has big implications. For an order compelling specific performance of repeated contractual promises, et cetera, but here's what it is, okay? In order requiring that the defendants continue to follow OpenAI's long-standing practice of making AI research and technology developed at OpenAI available to the public. This is like sort of an open source thing, right? That's one thing he's asking for. But second, in order prohibiting defendants from utilizing OpenAI, Inc., or its assets for the financial benefit of the individual defendants, Microsoft, or any other particular person or entity. So when you're thinking about this sort of lawsuit, what does it mean, the nonprofit and the tech, also think about, wow, what are these remedies? What would that mean? Is that the right answer? Is it the wrong answer? Because as business people, just generally, we're thinking about, what do you do about these things?
And there's no financial settlement that could resolve this dispute that's going to matter to Musk or anything. So in terms of where this goes, it's fascinating. I hope we will be able to continue this this discussion through the break, and I know that all three of you will be staying with us, I don't know, through the whole day, but surely I know through the morning. So I'd love to follow up on all these topics. Can you imagine getting such cutting-edge insight on every one of these, whether or not it was voice or law? And great question, too, drawing on the Hiroshima example. It's just so timely that we should have this whole conference. I congratulate the conference organizers again for having us think about societal implications of this technology. You know, as this is a year where, with the likely success next weekend, isn't it, of the Oscars, where Oppenheimer might clean the stage, but certainly the tragedy and the double-edged sword there that we wrestle with in a new technology, whether or not it was in life sciences and biotech and all the issues of cloning and all the rest before, or we've seen this, of course, in this technology. Now we've seen it in other technologies. The quote, of course, from Oppenheimer from I think it was Vishnu in the Hindu text, talking about how I am destroyer of worlds, is it gives us pause for thought. And we opened with the 2001 Space Odyssey as a cautionary tale, but this is a panel. It's been a very optimistic panel about possibilities and ways that you can, through design, insight, and anticipation, try to take us towards responsible options to a society that's never had a knife. A knife is an interesting new technology. You can do a lot with it. You can obviously cut up your food with it, or you can hurt somebody with it. And what you do with it is really what matters. But the developer of the knife has to help us wrestle with that. Let me just close by showing you something that Chris, I think, may have given us permission to show a product that he's just killed at Google. We have to thank you. We have the sound.
The Google phone is slashing monthly fees thanks to an ad-supported service that whispers ads right into your ear. Jeff Tate has more.
Thanks, Glenn. At a shareholders meeting yesterday, Google announced steep price cuts made possible by a revolutionary new voice recognition software that can detect keywords in users' conversations and verbally suggest related products and services on the spot.
So, Satra, where do you want to go for lunch?
Well, Jen, there are some great restaurants in my neighborhood.
Hungry, Sonny's Barbecue, the best place to grab comfort food, hundreds of locations nationwide.
That sounds good. Let's go there.
That sounds great.
Automated whispered advertising will allow us to offer the world's best smartphones nearly for free. Users won't even remember a time when they didn't have a second voice whispering in their ear.
Tech publication reviews have indeed been enthusiastic.
Hello?
Hey, Mom.
Mother's Day gifts, plants, chocolate, sexy
I'm calling you from my Google phone. It's barely costing me a thing.
Google also will be further offsetting consumer costs with ad-based ringtones.
Omart yourself, down to Chase Bank. Omart yourself, down to Chase Bank.
Google has preloaded dozens of new applications into the phone, including a GPS system that gives directions to sponsor businesses.
There's a Dunkin' Donuts in 0.6 miles. Let's go. Come on, let's go to Dunkin' Donuts.
As well as state-of-the-art camera software with subtle advertising imagery. Critics, however, are decrying the ad system as a possible safety concern, pointing to a recent 911 call placed by a beta tester of the Google phone service.
I don't know what happened. I just crashed my car. I skidded off the road.
Toyota Tacoma starting at under 16,000.
Sir, I'm sorry. I can't understand.
Hello, can you hear me?
You calm down.
My wife is here, but she's not moving.
Take her on the vacation of her dreams.
Sir?
Romantic getaways at dreamresorts.com.
Please repeat that. Sir, I need you to speak up.
Google has promised to resolve the issue in upgrades. In the meantime, Google is testing out cost-cutting software that will make it possible for your phone to call members of your contact list and mimic your voice while advertising products. Here's a sneak preview of what my friends would hear.
Hello.
Hey, just wanted to say hi and tell you about job opportunities at Monster.com. Fresh job listings posted daily. Have jobs emailed to you. Sign up and find your dream job today. For Tech Trends, I'm the real Jeff Tate.
Yahoo has also announced plans to enter the smartphone market. The Y-Phone, which will license current Google phone software, is expected to be out in 3 to 4 years.
So I want to thank you, Sam. Thanks for pulling that innovation. But Sam, Chris, Sebastian, thank you for your candor, for your wisdom, your lifetime of experience, what you do for advancing this technology in responsible ways, and your trust in me for getting in your way through your discussion today. Thank you, everybody. Great job.